Good day, folks. I'm back from my trip to Maldives. It's always been a strategically important space for me. What I noted was this time around there were far less Chinese than I'd seen before, and signages are also down. The other thing was that the airport that had been given to the Chinese for construction was just hanging there, and not a iota of it completed since I last left, maybe partly COVID. But a lot of people who are intelligentsia, right, and the people who are in the power, or powers maybe, or connected, said that it would actually, if it had stayed with GMR, it would have been done and dusted by now. The other interesting thing to note was that the intelligentsia, the business community, actually was fairly open to suggest that, what we have here is a situation is that if if it had not been for India, Maldives probably would have gone the way of Sri Lanka. I mean, this was said very clearly. The other thing is that when I realized that everything had to was Sri Lanka earlier, funding, financing, and all of a sudden that had completely dried up. The other interesting point to note is that I learned that the larger groups had been funded by SBI. SBI is fairly active in the resort development funding market, right? So those were impressive things, and people actually came out and said that it seemed very clear that the top level business community, intelligentsia really hankered for a good relationship with India, but there was definitely an undercurrent there where it was India out, and this was being fanned by Yameen. So India's got to do a lot more, right? Culturally, everywhere. India's in terms of movies, in terms of stars, in terms of songs, they're all over the place. And I also noted that there were Star TV playing the Asia Cup, with India playing Pakistan, and so on and so forth. So India was there, right? And what's happening now is China is sneezing, right? Now with China sneezing, as Pranab Dalsamta writes, China will be forced to tighten its financial outflows and recover loans overseas as it grapples with the first rate crisis at home, complicated by the Sichuan drought. He writes, the problem is IMF needs to buy in from all principal creditors to its country-specific debt sustainability assessment before releasing any assistance. While it does work closely with the Paris Club, it insists on these countries reaching an arrangement with China bilaterally. Here is where China acted tough on Zambia and is currently holding on to the Sri Lanka deal where we're currently holding on to Sri Lanka deal, where again IMF has internally firmed up a staff agreement for 2.9 billion, but creditors like China are yet to officially come on board, and that's the reason, folks, for the ship, right? These three countries are in the grip of considerable political uncertainties because of their economic distress, this being Sri Lanka and Pakistan and Zambia. But also China's economic slowdown could not only deepen this crisis further, but also throw up more crisis points across the globe. In other words, until now, the worry was about China's gaining control over crucial assets in these countries to advance its strategic ambitions. But the changing picture suggests a more chaotic prognosis where Beijing's domestic priorities may dictate its external economic choices, thus ushering a fresh round of uncertainty and insecurity. Chinese loan apps probe ED raids, Paytm, Razorpay, cash-free premises. How to end the China dispute? Intervention by top leadership with mutual respect can help to a positive trajectory. Total BS, because here's as Gautam Bambala right, play Chinese checker. PLA's a big aim at LAC is to get India to accept China's hegemony. We must see this and prepare, and that's their only game. In the short term, we must continue balancing Chinese power by further beefing up our strategic partnership with Japan, France, the US, Australia, and other similar countries. This is the recipe for India to rise to the China challenge. COVID, China shuts world's largest electronic markets. PLA troops stop Indian braziers near LAC, no dispute reported. Army receives swarm drones, eyes light tanks to check PLA. India flags China's infra push in Karakoram. China's biggest city slaps tighter curbs amid fresh COVID outbreak. Amid growing China ties, Solomon Islands suspends all naval visits. And here Solomon Islands should think about what's happening to the other three countries. Speak better strategically, as Harsh P. Pant writes. He says, given the downward spiral in India's ties with China, a joint exercise hardly makes any sense. Yet the fact that it has been called by Russia makes all the difference. Probably. India's military engagements with other like-minded nations such as Japan, Australia and the Indo-Pacific are also gaining momentum. So while there may be some discomfort for Indian soldiers in dealing with the counterparts at a time when they are facing each other off in the LAC, that's a small price to pay if it means keeping India-Russia ties at even keel. But New Delhi needs to start communicating its intent better. Strategic communication is an art. It's time to master it. We don't have it, right? Etiquette breach. India slams Chinese envoy in Lanka for remarks on spy ship. India key to countering China, US Navy Chief. Jaishankar, state of border will decide state of India-China ties. That's why it's not going to get better. But here's what's good for us. Defense trade in focus as Hasina begins visit. Bangladesh PM calls India tested friend, Lord's Ukraine rescue. Bangladesh to give scholarship to kin of Indians killed, injured in 71 war. Friend indeed. PM Hasina supporters and opponents back home will be tracking her India visit for headway on Tista water sharing. Army chief hands over military equipment to Nepal counterpart. But the issue is Agnipath, folks. Indian anchor of regional security says Lankan envoy. Hey, what's he going to do? They're out on a wing and a prayer because of the loans by China. Sharp exchange between Delhi, Beijing over ship in Lanka. Join us to stop Lanka from being used as interference tool. Ranil tells party. Is he an idiot or what? He's already a pawn in the hands of China. What's he calling his parties to do? These are proper people like Ranil. Totally untrustworthy. Third of Pakistan underwater right now. Pak IMF has approved 1.2 billion for bailout. Finance Minister blah. But the important part, folks, to note is that while giving and approving this loan, one of the risks that have been cited by the IMF is China. This is the first time it's come out and said so. Cheers. So the war in when you look at the Ukraine war, not going too well, right? Ukraine begins offensive to retake South. UN experts head to nuclear site. Ukraine war, the global order is being reshaped by Harsh Pant. He says, even as the Ukraine crisis drags on, the strategic map of the world is being reshaped by the new era in great power politics. Relying on old, tired cliches will hardly serve any purpose if India is to emerge as a leading power in the international system. Absolutely right. Russia lords India for following old interests on energy issues. Do we really have a choice, right? Russia switches off gas supply to Europe indefinitely, cites oil leak. This is rogue. Both them and him, Putin and Xi, they're learning from each other. Putin, Modi may meet at SCO summit, say Lavrov. Madagascar police shooting leaves at least 19 dead. Watch the Indo-Pacific here. India and Iran ministers talk about nuclear deal economy. A big change about to happen in the Middle East if this nuclear deal goes through. At least 30 killed in Baghdad clashes. All is not well. And then you have this. Rajnath starts Mongolia visit today to be in Japan for 2+2. Rethinking defense, as writes C. Raja Mohan. Japan is recasting its national security vision. India must inject strategic content into ties during 2+2 dialogue. While Tokyo and Delhi are shedding their old inhibitions, the Japanese debate is coming up with concrete options to cope with the growing Chinese military power. In Delhi, the discourse within the strategic community remains focused on geopolitical abstractions rather than concrete military strategies. And that, folks, is what our real problem is. Both Delhi and Tokyo have some distance to go in developing capabilities to deter Beijing. There is deep political resistance and bureaucratic inertia against any effort to recast defense policies in both capitals. And it is why we are getting wasted even under this particular government. Jaishankar has let us down, and probably the Prime Minister too, and the National Security Advisor. A whole bunch of them, folks. Cheers. So we have a situation, obviously, in the besides Ukraine, the U.S. focuses on Taiwan and the South China Sea, right? In a first, Taiwan fires warning shots at Chinese drone. Biden admin readies $1.1 billion arms deal for Taiwan. China monitors US ships transiting Taiwan Straits. China behavior raises chances of standoff at LAC, former Oz PM. India gets nearly twice as many US student visas as Chinese this year. But you got to see this, right? Taiwan fires warning shots at Chinese drone. It says, as China ramped up pressure, the United States and Taiwan moved forward with formal trade talks and continued routine US warship transit operations in the Taiwan Straits, despite Beijing's warnings. Washington is also planning a 1.1 billion weapons sale to the island, its biggest in nearly 2 years, according to Bloomberg. He says, like Pelosi, several US lawmakers have since traveled to Taiwan in a show of support in Beijing. Now that's really the fact. But on the ground, what's giving China a window of opportunity is the greed of the corporate sector in the United States. He says Biden's CCP confused China policy. So the vast Commerce Department has barely used its restrictive licensing policy in China's case. American CEOs have reportedly bragged at investor conferences how they don't need licenses to sell anything to China, and then it's way past time the tap was sealed shut. So this is what the United States and the government must realize. And this is the dilemma because of the freedom of the corporate sector, because there's lots of information saying if this guy's banned any further, these corporates might move their head offices to some other places, like maybe even Sri Lanka, who knows, right? Anybody where the United States can't put any pressure. But till they totally squeeze the technology going to China and those sales, the United States is not really going to be able to get a little ahead of this game. Cheers. The other big change, obviously, that's happened is the new Prime Minister in UK, the burden of the crown. Liz Truss takes charge of a divided party, anxious nation. I'd always said, India was going on about, Indians were going on about Sunak. It was just not possible, right? India, but I think she's better for India than Sunak, where Sunak would have got caught in the crossfire of India and Pakistan and so on and so forth. India and US must build a high trust ecosystem. And this is where it is at, right? India's growing economic weight supports the case of democratic values, a rules-based international order, and development led by a system of free enterprise in the Indo-Pacific and the world at large. By working with the US and other like-minded partners, India can maximize its decade and build a high-trust ecosystem to facilitate mutual growth and set the right rules for an increasingly digitized 21st century economy. By doing so, India can shape the next phase of Indo-Pacific development and expand the sectors that will pave its way to develop nation status by 2047, right? A cornerstone of such high-trust ecosystem would be a secure data corridor that establishes protocols for the cross-border data flows. And a promising first step would be for both sides to leverage Quad to create a memorandum of understanding that outlines common principles of data governance. Another key pillar of a high-trust ecosystem is mutual recognition of standards, certification, and testing. And this is really, really critical. People don't realize how much. America's national security apparatus is strengthened by technologies developed by Indian companies and other allies. Likewise, India could benefit from cutting-edge technical capabilities developed by American firms and managed by Indian nationals and appropriate security clearances. Together, the US and India should forge a trusted defense tech ecosystem and expand it to future-focused sectors such as artificial intelligence, space technologies, and quantum research. Equally important is to fortify cyber security defense through greater knowledge sharing across governance and industry. This is, folks, a critical part. The United States is a partner that you need. You need like a day comes after night, or night comes after day. Guest list indicative of India's government acceptability. This is while PM commissions India made carrier, says government long ignored Indo-Pacific. Now, I'm not sure why everything gets into domestic policy, but hey, what the hell? He might be right. India needs to get cracking on the next aircraft carrier, and that is what I've said. And in my opinion, the next aircraft carrier, before it is launched, built in India, should be leased from the United States. That will take this relationship and make it even stronger, just like the nuclear deal. India's G20 presidency planned 215 meetings in 55 cities across nations. Let one be in Srinagar, let one be in Leh, let one be in Itanagar. That's the way to go, folks. Put a stamp on the G20 against good old China, folks. Good old China. Jai Hind.